So joining us once again is our friend from Pro Football Talk, and we'll talk about his book that's available, ebook that we talked about the last time. We'll talk about that with him as well. Our friend Mike Florio is back here on the program. How you doing, Mike? Good to see you, bud.
Rich, I am doing well today. How about you?
I'm doing as well as can be, brother. I mean, all of us, obviously. You know, we didn't expect to hear this about what was going on at NFL headquarters yesterday, Mike. Obviously we're still learning the details of it, but it seems like a guy thought he had CTE from his high school football days and wanted to take it out on the National Football League. That's what it looks like.
It's just an example, Rich, and it's important we never get desensitized to these tragedies that happen from time to time, but all too often. The idea that when you leave the house, you're accepting the risk that you're going to get shot out in a public place, at work, at school, at church, at the store, wherever you may be. And no matter how strong the security presence is it really going to match somebody who's got an assault rifle? And I know there's a cocktail of issues that need to be addressed. I just wish it would ever feel like we're addressing them. I feel like we never address any of them. And we just accept it and we wait for the next one. And we look at the odds and we say, it's a big country, and yes, it happens, but the chances of it happening to me or someone I care about are minuscule. And then it shows up on your doorstep and you realize it's unacceptable that we don't solve these issues. The combination of mental health, access to weapons of war, and I know people will say, it's not a weapon of war, stick to sports. Look, these are moments where we shouldn't stick to sports because these are moments that define our humanity. And we either care about others or we don't. We either want to solve this problem or we don't. And unfortunately, over the past 25 years, don't has been the prevailing word.
But the whole thing about stick to sports is we do stick to sports, Mike. You know, it's not like I open up Pro Football Talk, you know, in any of the formats in which I receive it, and see you talking about this 24/7. You do stick to sports. I mean, this crashed into the sports world.
Absolutely.
So that's when we are actually in our lane to talk about these sorts of things.
Well, absolutely. But I know from experience that there will be people who will get upset if there's any comment made about any effort to prevent people who have no business. And I think reasonable people would say no one needs to have an assault rifle. You can defend yourself without one. You can defend your family without one. And when someone shows up and casually strolls in, the images were chilling.
No doubt.
Of the individual who just strolled into a building where you've been, where I've been. As soon as I saw the pictures, because I saw it described as the Blackstone building, it's like, that's not the Blackstone building, that's the NFL headquarters.
That's right.
And it's both. But it is unsettling whenever it happens. But when it happens in a place where you've been, and it happens to an organization that we're all who cover the sport intimately involved with, it just brings us back to the idea that it happens too often and we just move on to the next time. And we just hope that as much time as possible elapses between this time and the inevitable next time.
Mike Florio here on the Rich Eisen Show. Turning the page. Best I can here. There's no artful way to do it. Now that we are a week into National Football League training camp, Mike Florio, what is the item that's at the top of your list that you think will have the most impactful win-loss result in the playing season that does start a little over a month from now? Mike?
I mean, to answer your question literally, the one thing that we're all monitoring with the players on our favorite teams, the players on our fantasy teams, and you never know when that notification is going to come across your phone that someone suffered a serious injury. We're in that zone where you're kind of holding your breath for news that your favorite player is going to be out for the year, and who's been carted off here and who's been carted off there, and how bad is the injury. The Cowboys had a scare yesterday with Tyler Guyton. At first, they thought he had a torn ACL. It turns out it's a fracture that'll keep him out 4 to 6 weeks, but that will impact the standings. And that's the thing. We spend 7 months talking about what could happen, what will happen, what may happen, who's closed the gap on whom, who are the Super Bowl candidates. But the one thing that we don't talk about because we don't know who it's going to happen to, when it's going to happen to them, and how long they're going to be out. But we know it's going to happen. People are going to get injured. And one injury changes everything. One week one injury just completely potentially reverses a team's fortunes for that season. Look at the 2008 Patriots. That lightning strike, Bernard Pollard low hit on Tom Brady. He's out for the year. And even though they went 11-5, they didn't make it to the playoffs. And that was the first game after the loss to the Giants in Super Bowl 42 that would have been the perfect 19-0 season. So anytime, any place, there can be an injury that changes everything. And I think that if you're covering the NFL, if you're paying attention to the NFL, that is the thing you're kind of holding your breath for as training camp becomes joint practices, becomes preseason games, and we work up until week one, when we know there's going to be that list after every weekend of games of guys who are going to be out 1 week, 1 month, or the rest of the year.
And then in terms of holdouts, right? One ended in Cincinnati, and it was the rookie Shamar Stewart. We've been talking for weeks about what can be done to bridge the gap. What was done to bridge the gap, Mike?
Well, and it was something, Rich, that could have been done a long time ago. And this is basic negotiation.
Yeah.
When you come to Shemar Stewart and say, we want to use language that will void your guarantees, that is different from the language we used on last year's first-round pick, Amarius Mims, different from the language we used just a few months ago with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. We've got new language we're going to use, and you're the guinea pig. You're the one that's going to have this. Oh, and we're not offering you any other concession in order to get you to do this. Ultimately, what do? They offered a concession. They paid more of his signing bonus up front than they otherwise have paid to first-round draft picks. That was it. That's all it took. A simple little face-saving quid pro quo. But there's a stubbornness to the Bengals, and it's rooted to a certain extent in money. But I think the deeper issue, Rich, is power. The team wants the players to understand who's in charge. We own the machine. You are just a piece in the machine who inevitably will be removed and replaced with someone else. The machine will survive for decades, if not centuries, beyond your existence. That is the message. So we are not bending to you. You will bend to us. And that's why I think the pressure, the urgency to get a deal done that comes from a normal holdout isn't going to affect the Bengals. They don't care. Hey, Trey Hendrickson, you want to pay us $50,000 a day to hold out a training camp? Fine, we'll take your money. Hey, you want to give up your game checks of nearly $1 million a week? Fine, we'll keep your money. We don't care. We're not going to panic. We're not going to blink. You stay home until you decide to show up. And that's why I said back in June, Rich, before mandatory minicamp, if he goes down this path of staying away, he's potentially going to be this year's Hassan Reddick, who missed everything, missed regular season games, and then there was some awkward face-saving deal when he showed up that really didn't give him anything close to what he'd lost. And by the end of the day, you lose millions. And what do you prove? What do you ultimately prove if you're Trey Hendrickson? So who knows where that stands? But my guess is they are not nervous because they ultimately don't care. They'd rather have the message sent to the player than have the player in training camp getting ready for the season.
Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, the host of PFT Live on Peacock, which is something you can get right here on Roku, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. I'd like you to interpret Stephen Jones's comments for me, Mike Florio. This was Stephen Jones over the weekend when he was asked about the pay Micah chants that were coming from the stands of the Cowboys faithful towards Jerry Jones in Oxnard. Here was Stephen Jones in that regard.
Did you hear the fans yelling "Pay Micah" yesterday? And what do you think when you hear that?
It doesn't change anything. I mean, we want to pay Micah too. He's got to want to be paid.
What does that mean, do you think, Mike?
Why will you not take our offer, our lowball offer that doesn't properly value your overall contributions to the team? Look, that's the problem. They're not offering him enough. Yeah, he has to want to be paid, i.e. he has to want to take our substandard offer. And this is why, Rich, I'm a firm believer he should have held out. He should have stayed away. And I think at some point he just needs to walk out. Even though there is significant risk, once you're away for 5 days, they can shut you down for the rest of the year. You play for no one and you don't get paid. They'd be beyond stupid to do that to one of their best players, perhaps their most talented player ever, as Jerry Jones said that same day. But I think this is just a manifestation of the Cowboys' habit of dragging their feet and lowballing the player and waiting until the last possible minute. And because he didn't hold out, as I told you last week, my prediction is he's going to end up playing for $24 million this year, and they're going to do it again next year when they apply the exclusive franchise tag to him. That they'll happily pay him $24 million this year, just like they happily paid him $3 million last year. That's the other side of this. If you're going to focus on counting the beans, you got Micah Parsons for 2 years at a combined salary of $27 million. That is a good deal if you're the Cowboys. Yeah, we're eventually going to have to pay him more, but we got him for 2 years at $27 million total, and we'll take it. I feel like at some level, that is motivating them to kick this can as long as they can into the future.
We had Clarence Hill, who's been covering the Cowboys longer than anybody else for a beat writer, currently on the Cowboys beat, Mike, about the dance, if you will, that's been going on between the Cowboys, the Joneses, and Micah Parsons. He said that there was a handshake agreement between Jerry and Micah back in the spring, and Micah said, call my agent, and the Cowboys, the Joneses, have yet to do that. And I heard that comment, and I thought to myself that Micah's got to want to be paid, had to do with maybe, you know, he shook a hand over it back in March. We're not calling his agent. He's got to want to be paid. That's the way I kind of took it. I guess there's many different ways one can take it.
Well, and the way that you took it, the only problem is it's a violation of the CBA. No deal is enforceable until it is reduced to writing and negotiated by the representative certified by the NFL Players Association. And if a player is represented by an agent, the commissioner is prohibited from approving any contract that has not been negotiated and signed by the agent. So whatever the Cowboys are trying to do, and yeah, they'd love to deal directly with the player, and they'd love to appeal, and they've tried this in the past. Don't demand top dollar from us. You'll make all sorts of extra money as a player on the Cowboys in endorsement deals, and you'll have a future in broadcasting as a former Cowboy. They tried that with Ezekiel Elliott. They tried it with Dak Prescott, and both of those guys said, no, we're not going to do that. We want what we are entitled to as football players. So handshake deals are worthless. They're not worth the paper they're not printed on. At some point, you've got to deal with the agent. And it's asinine for the Cowboys, for the Joneses, to think that well, we had a handshake deal with Micah and he just needs to come sign it. They have to deal with his agent or there's nothing to sign.
Mike Florio, creator, editor-in-chief of Pro Football Talk here on the Rich Eisen Show. You got to think Pickett being out for a week with a hamstring injury kind of hamstrings his ability to win this Cleveland job. Is that a safe assumption to make, do you think?
Well, I think so. Rich, you know, to quote Juju Smith-Schuster, the Browns is the Browns. And it's almost like they're trying to do the dumbest things they can do. They never should have drafted Shedeur Sanders after they drafted Dillian Gabriel. You don't bring 4 quarterbacks to training camp and expect all of them to compete on an even playing field. So you're going to do something with one of them at some point. And I feel like they're just waiting to trade one of them. I thought they'd maybe try to trade Kenny Pickett before camp even opened. Now he's injured, and it gives the younger guys more reps and more opportunities so the Browns can begin to figure out what they are going to be and what they could be as players in the NFL. And hovering over all of this is the fact that they have the Jaguars first-round pick next year, and if the Browns are bad this year, it'll be a high first-round pick of their own, and they're going to be in position to try to draft somebody next year. If Arch Manning comes out, Colin Cowherd was already beating that drum of possibility of Arch Manning and Nick Saban in Cleveland. So, you know, when with the Browns, I put nothing past owner Jimmy Haslam. He gets what he wants, and the people who work for him do what he wants. So I think it will help the other guys, and it will hurt Kenny Pickett, and it may increase the likelihood that he'll be the first man out at some point. Not in November. I'd like to think by the time the roster is set at 53, they'll have 3 quarterbacks, not 4. Because if you have 4, that's one less spot you have for all the other positions where you have needs when it's time to put a team together and function on game days.
And it's kind of crazy, Mike. The first 2 picks in the draft this past year in Green Bay, quarterback, first overall, and then second overall is a player who can give you 100 snaps potentially in a game in the National Football League in 2025 and is the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. And we don't hear anything about Cam Ward or Travis Hunter nationally. Is that because they're in the AFC South, in the sleepy football hamlets of Nashville and Jacksonville, right? Is that what it is? Because otherwise, I mean, this is Cam Ward, and if Travis Hunter plays both sides of the football week one, right, and Cam Ward is starting week one, normally that's the sort of stuff that would be all over the place. You think about it.
You're absolutely right. And look, Cam Ward has the potential to be special. You watch some of his film, you watch him throw him the football, that ball comes out fast and it zips. And when he did rookie minicamp, all of his new receivers, and they drafted more than a few of them, their comments were like, man, this ball comes out different. When you see things like that, that's an indication that this quarterback is an eye-opener. This guy is different. This guy is unlike anything these players have ever seen in their lives, and they have to adjust their habit of catching the ball to the fact that this ball is coming in hotter than it usually is. So the Titans could be in very good hands with Cam Ward. He's got an intensity to him. He's got a leadership quality to him. He's got a commitment to the game that mirrors some of the all-time greats already. Now, how he plays when it's time to go out and play, let's see. But I think there's potential there for Cam Ward to be great. And with Travis Hunter, we've never seen anything like it. And yes, it's the Jaguars, and the Jaguars are easily ignored. And it's all going to come down to, are they successful? New coach, new GM, a lot of new with the Jaguars, and we'll see. But that Titans-Jaguars rivalry is more interesting than it's ever been. It's impossible for it to be less interesting than it's ever been.
Yes.
But yeah, this takes a couple of teams that, and I know the fans of the two teams get involved because they do have fans. They get upset when we say,
no doubt,
these are boring teams, but somebody's got to be the most boring team in the NFL, and the Jaguars and the Titans are in competition for that.
You're right. I mean, Jaguars open at home for Carolina, and Tennessee's at Denver. And again, Denver's a fascinating team to me, man. Bo Nix, year 2, he would have been offensive rookie of the year if not for Jaden Daniels. And I know that's like, if my grandma had wheels, she'd be a wagon. But, Denver, Sean Payton, honestly, they dead capped Russell Wilson to the largest dead cap in history. And would you call the Broncos a Super Bowl contender coming into this year, Mike? Yeah.
Yes. Aaron Rodgers said last week there are usually 6 to 8 serious Super Bowl contenders, maybe 10 to 12, and he sees the Steelers as one of the 12. And I started putting a list together, and I'm sorry, the Steelers are not one of the 12, because to be one of the 12, they're going to have to elbow out the Broncos. And the Broncos are legit. The AFC West is scary. It's the best collection of coaching talent, top to bottom, that any division has ever had, team by team. The NFC East had some great coaches in the 80s, but they also had the Cardinals. So, so all due respect to the then St. Louis Cardinals, but that's just the reality. 4 teams, this division, the 4 coaches, the talent they have. The Raiders, the poor Raiders, if they were in any other division, they'd maybe be a wild card contender. But the Broncos, the Chargers, the Chiefs, I think the Broncos are legitimate. The defense is better than it was last year. They didn't lose Vance Joseph to a head coaching job, which allows Sean Payton to entrust that side of the ball to him. The offense is going to be better. They signed Cortland Sutton. They've got J.K. Dobbins, who when healthy is as good as any running back in the NFL. They've added R.J. Harvey. I mean, they are feeling good, quietly, confidently good about what they've got going into the season. And they could stir things up with the Kansas City Chiefs when it's time to play the games.
Hey, man, we played that game too. I guess great minds think alike. As soon as Rodgers made that statement, we went around the room here and say, how many Super Bowl contenders are there in the NFL? I came up with 15, Brockman 12, and TJ just said, screw it. This is going to be a very tight group. You said 7.
7.
Right? And you came up with 12, Mike?
I've got about 11 or 12.
Okay.
And the Steelers were down to that 12th spot. And if they get it, then the Chargers don't, the Broncos don't, the Vikings don't, the Packers don't. So, and 12 is stretching it. There are coaches who will tell you at any given time in the NFL, there are 10 teams to worry about, 10 teams you don't have to worry about, and 10 to 12 teams in the middle. And look at where we are. Even with the parity of the salary cap, ideally, You win the Super Bowl every 32 years in this system. And look at the past 32 years and look at how many teams have won it, how many times they've won it, how many teams haven't been to it, how many teams haven't won it, how many teams haven't even gotten to the conference championship game, i.e. the Cowboys. So it's amazing when you look at how teams have cracked the code on the current system of salary cap, free agency, draft and develop, and get yourself a franchise quarterback, and that's the indispensable ingredient. But we have teams that have figured it out, and we have plenty of teams that can't. And this is not what Pete Rozelle envisioned back in the 70s when he got sick and tired of the Steelers, Dolphins, Cowboys, Raiders running the NFL. Well, what do we have now, Rich? We've got the Eagles, Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, Lions, 49ers. Like, there's an upper crust of the NFL and everybody else.
Well, again, we're just a few short weeks away from seeing that play out, and Big Shield is coming out in just a few weeks' time, 3 weeks' time now, and you can pre-order this ebook by you, Mike Florio, on Amazon right now, correct?
Yes, correct. 99 cents for the ebook, which is one of the dumbest things I've ever done. 99 cents is essentially giving it away, but yes. I want to promote reading as a means of enjoyment. We all have our stresses. We all have the crap we have to deal with day in and day out. We love football because it gives us a distraction from the things that otherwise bring us down. And there's nothing like a good book. Now, it remains to be determined whether I've written a good book, but there's nothing like a good book that sweeps you away. You know, you look forward to reading a few chapters at the end of the day, whatever the case may be. So I remember being in school and hating the idea of having to read. They made us read, and it pissed me off. And as an adult, when I discovered that reading can be very enjoyable if you like the subject matter, so I'm trying to promote a shift for everyone who hated reading in school. Yes. 99 cents, you get to read something you enjoy. It's a tale of gambling, the mob, professional football, and some of the other professional sports are involved too. There's a baseball player who's caught up in this scam, and we're seeing what's happening with the Cleveland Guardians. There's a basketball player in a very Jonte Porter kind of situation, and at the heart of it is a mobster who handles different professional athletes and gets inside information from them for money. And of course, once you're in, Rich, it's kind of hard to get out.
That's right. And Big Shield, last time you were on, it was 4 weeks away from being released. Now it's 3 weeks away from being released, which is my passive-aggressive way of pointing out.
You're burying the lead.
Who came back on the show a week after saying he doesn't come on the show because I don't ask. Look who's back on.
It seems intentional, Mike.
Feel free to space it out a little more, though. Somewhere between 1 week and 5 months.
You tell me the right. In that gray area, that's where the cadence lives. Very good, Mike. Thanks for the time, man. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Rich. Good talking to you, buddy.
The one and only Mike Florio, everybody. Pro Football Talk and Big Shield out in 3 weeks.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.